My mum sent a message inviting everyone to her 50th birthday party except me. She said, "All my children are successful except you. You chose to be a lowly teacher. I no longer see you as my daughter." I didn't cry. 4 years later, the governor, "My name is Amara Holloway, and I'm 26 years old. 4 years ago, my parents handed me $5 and a will that left everything to my sister because I chose to teach. They called my career small, embarrassing, unworthy of their legacy. I didn't argue. I just left. What they didn't know was that 4 years later I'd be standing on a stage with the governor shaking my hand, and they'd be sitting in the audience waiting for recognition that would never come. Hit subscribe if you want to see what I said. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Let me start from the beginning. Growing up, the Holloway family was what people in our Georgia town called successful. My father owned a commercial real estate firm. My mother ran a boutique consulting business. They weren't millionaires, but they lived like they were. Country club memberships, annual trips to Europe, a house that looked like it belonged in a magazine. My sister Celeste fit perfectly into that world. She went to law school, married a corporate executive, and built a life that mirrored theirs. I didn't. I studied education. I wanted to teach. When I told my parents, they didn't hide their disappointment. "Teaching," my mother said, "that's what people do when they can't do anything else. That's not true. It's a fallback career, Amara. You're smarter than that. I'm not falling back, I'm choosing." My father sighed. "You're choosing struggle. You'll never make real money. You'll never build anything. I don't need to build an empire. I need to build something that matters." He shook his head and walked away. That was the first crack. By the time I graduated and started teaching at a public school, the crack had become a canyon. They stopped asking about my job, stopped mentioning me at family gatherings. When people asked about their daughters, they'd talk about Celeste's firm and her husband's promotions. I became the footnote they didn't read aloud. Then came the family meeting. My mother called and said it was important. I showed up thinking maybe something was wrong. Instead, they sat me down at the dining room table with Celeste beside them and my father holding a folder. "We've been reviewing our estate plan," my father began, "and we've made some changes." I nodded. Unsure where this was going. "We want to be fair, but we also want to make sure our assets go to someone who will honor what we've built. Your sister has proven she understands what it means to build a legacy. She's made smart choices, invested wisely, married well." I felt my stomach tighten. "What are you saying?" "We're saying that when the time comes, the house, the savings, and the properties will go to Celeste." My mother slid an envelope across the table. "For you, we've set aside something appropriate for your situation." I opened it. Inside was a check for $5. I stared at it. "Is this a joke?" "It's symbolic," my mother said. "Of what?" "Of the fact that your career choice has consequences. Teaching is noble, Amara, but it's not sustainable. You chose a lowly profession. We're choosing to invest in someone who values what we value." I looked at Celeste. She said nothing, just sat there with her hands folded, expression neutral. I stood up, the envelope still in my hand. "Okay. That's it? Okay. What else do you want me to say?" My father frowned. "You could acknowledge that we're being reasonable. You could thank us for being honest." I walked to the door. "Thank you for being honest." And I left. I drove for an hour before I pulled over and cried. Not because of the money, because of what it represented. I wasn't worth their respect. I wasn't worth their pride. I was an embarrassment they tolerated. I called the only person I could think of, Mrs. Ruth Calder. Ruth was a retired teacher who lived 2 streets over from the school where I worked. She'd been my mentor during my first year, the person who kept me from quitting when the job felt impossible. She answered on the second ring. "Amara, are you all right?" I tried to speak but couldn't. "Where are you?" I told her. Stay there, I'm coming." 20 minutes later, she pulled up beside me, got out of her car, and slid into my passenger seat. She didn't ask what happened. She just sat with me until I could breathe again. When I finally told her, she didn't look surprised. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know. You could quit. You could prove them right. Find some corporate job and make the money they think matters. Or, or you could prove them wrong." I looked at her. "How?" "By staying. By teaching like your life depends on it. By showing those kids that someone believes in them even when no one else does." That sounds exhausting. It is. But it's also the only thing that matters. She reached over and squeezed my hand. "You can stay with me. I have a spare room. You don't have to do that, I know. But I'm going to." So I moved in. Ruth refused rent. Said having me there reminded her why she'd taught in the first place. She cooked dinner most nights. We'd sit at her small kitchen table and talk about lesson plans, difficult students, and the families who didn't show up to conferences. She never made me feel like a burden. She made me feel seen. One night, about 6 months after I moved in, she asked me something I'd been avoiding. "Do you miss them? Your family?" "Sometimes." "What do you miss?" I thought about it. I miss the idea of them, the version I thought they were. But the real version? No. She nodded. "Good. Because the real version doesn't deserve you." Over the next year, Ruth became everything my mother wasn't. She celebrated my small wins. She listened when I talked about my students. She reminded me that teaching wasn't just a job, it was a calling. And slowly I started to believe her. The school I taught at was called Riverside Academy, but there was nothing prestigious about it. It was underfunded, overcrowded, and located in a neighborhood most people drove past without slowing down. The students were written off before they walked through the door. Test scores were low, graduation rates were worse, teachers burned out and left. But I stayed. Not because I was special, because I didn't know where else to go. My classroom became my world. I taught 9th grade English to kids who hated reading, who'd been told they were behind, who believed school was something to survive, not enjoy. I started small. I brought in books I thought they'd actually care about. Stories about kids like them. I let them write about their lives instead of forcing essays about dead authors. I stayed late to tutor anyone who asked. Some days progress felt invisible, but then something would shift. A kid who never turned in work would hand me a poem. A student who sat silent for weeks would raise their hand. By my 3rd year, my students' test scores started climbing. Not because I was a miracle worker, because I refused to give up on them. The district noticed. So did a local education nonprofit. They invited me to speak at a workshop about teaching in underserved schools. I almost said no. But Ruth convinced me. "You need to let people see what you're doing." "Why?" "Because teachers like you don't get enough credit, and kids like yours don't get enough advocates." So I went. I told the truth. About the struggles. About the wins. About why I stayed when leaving would have been easier. Afterward, a woman from the state education board approached me. That was powerful. "Thank you. We'd like to stay in touch." A year later, she called again. This time with an invitation I didn't believe was real. Before I go further, hit like and subscribe if this story is resonating with you. And if you're still watching but haven't subscribed, drop a comment and tell me why. I'm genuinely curious. The governor's office wants to recognize outstanding educators at a state summit. Your name came up. Mine? You've done something most people can't. You've changed outcomes in a school everyone thought was beyond saving. We'd like you to speak. I sat down. This is real? Completely. The event will be in Atlanta. There'll be dignitaries, educators, press. It's a big deal. I felt my chest tighten. I don't know if I'm the right person for this. You are. We'll send details. I hung up and stared at the phone. Ruth walked into the room. What happened? The governor's office called. They want me to speak at a summit. Her face lit up. Amara, that's incredible. I don't know if I can do it. Yes, you can. What if I mess it up? Then you mess it up, but you show up anyway. I spent the next 2 weeks preparing, writing notes, practicing in front of Ruth, doubting every word. The day before the event, my phone buzzed. A message from Celeste. Heard about the summit. Mom and Dad are coming. Congratulations. I stared at the screen. They weren't invited. I didn't respond. The next morning, I drove to Atlanta. The venue was massive, a hotel ballroom filled with hundreds of people, educators, politicians, cameras. I felt sick. Ruth had insisted on coming with me. She sat in the front row, smiling like she'd always known this would happen. Then I saw them. My parents, my sister, sitting 3 rows back. My mother wore a navy suit. My father looked proud. Celeste was recording on her phone. They thought this was their moment. I turned away. The governor spoke first, thanking educators, talking about the importance of public schools. Then he introduced me. Amara Holloway is proof that one teacher can change the trajectory of an entire community. Her students at Riverside Academy have defied every expectation, and it's because of her belief in them. Please welcome her to the stage. I walked up. My hands were shaking. I stood at the podium and looked out at the crowd. Ruth was crying. My parents were smiling. I took a breath. Thank you for this honor. I don't take it lightly. I paused. When I started teaching, I was told my career was too small to matter, that it wasn't a real profession, that I'd chosen struggle over success. The room was silent. I believed that for a while. I thought maybe they were right. Maybe I'd made a mistake. But then I met my students. Kids who'd been written off. Kids who didn't believe they were smart enough, good enough, worthy enough. And I realized something. The people who told me teaching was small had never been in a classroom. They'd never watched a kid's face light up when they finally understand something they thought was impossible. They'd never seen what happens when you refuse to give up on someone everyone else has abandoned. I looked at my parents. My mother's smile had faded. Teaching isn't small. It's the most important thing I'll ever do. And the people who don't understand that don't understand what matters. I paused again. When I was cut off from my family, someone else stepped in. Someone who saw me when I felt invisible. Someone who believed in me when my own mother didn't. I looked at Ruth. Mrs. Ruth Calder took me into her home. She fed me. She encouraged me. She reminded me every single day that my work mattered. She became the mother I needed when the one I had decided I wasn't worth her time. Ruth was crying harder now. People started looking around, trying to figure out who I was talking about. I wasn't left with much when I started teaching. $5, to be exact. That's what my parents thought my career was worth. But Ruth gave me something no amount of money could buy. She gave me dignity. The room was completely silent. I saw my mother's face go pale. My father looked down. Celeste had stopped recording. So when I stand here today and accept this recognition, I want to be clear about who I'm thanking. I'm thanking the woman who raised me when my own family turned their backs. I'm thanking the woman who taught me that worth isn't measured in money or status, but in the lives you touch. I'm thanking my mother, Ruth Calder. The room erupted in applause. Ruth stood, tears streaming down her face. I stepped off the stage and walked straight to her. We hugged, and for the first time in years, I felt whole. After the ceremony, people swarmed Ruth and me, educators, reporters. The governor himself came over to shake our hands. My biological family stayed in their seats. When the crowd thinned, my mother approached. Amara. I turned. What? Can we talk? There's nothing to talk about. You humiliated us. I told the truth. You made us look like monsters. I made you look like what you are. She opened her mouth to respond, but Ruth stepped forward. I think it's time for you to leave. My mother stared at her. Excuse me? You heard me. You've done enough damage. Leave her alone. My father stood. We're her parents. No, Ruth said quietly. You're the people who gave birth to her. I'm her mother, and I'm asking you to go. They hesitated. Then they left. Celeste followed without a word. Ruth turned to me. You okay? I nodded. Yeah, I am. Good. Because you just did the bravest thing I've ever seen. I didn't feel brave, I felt exhausted. But I also felt free. A few weeks later, I got a letter from my parents. It was an apology, sort of. They said they'd made mistakes, that they wanted to rebuild. I didn't respond. And not because I hated them, but because I didn't need them anymore. Ruth and I still live together. She's 72 now, slowing down a bit, but she still asks about my students, still listens to my lesson plans, still reminds me why I teach. She's still my mother, the real one. One afternoon, we were sitting on her porch drinking tea when she said something I'll never forget. You know what the difference is between your family and me? What? They wanted you to be someone you weren't. I just wanted you to be yourself. I looked at her. That's all I ever needed. She smiled. I know. We sat in silence for a while, watching the sun set. And I realized something. I'd spent years chasing approval from people who would never give it. But the woman sitting beside me had given it freely, without conditions, without expectations. She'd given me what family is supposed to give: love. 6 months after the summit, I received another invitation, this time from the State Board of Education. They wanted to create a mentorship program pairing experienced teachers with new ones in struggling schools. They wanted me to lead it. I said yes. Ruth cried when I told her. See? I told you teaching wasn't small. It's still not about the recognition. I know, but it's nice that people see what I've always seen. The program launched the following year. We paired 50 veteran teachers with newcomers, gave them resources, support, and community. The results were immediate. Retention rates went up. Teacher satisfaction improved. Students benefited. My parents never reached out again after that first letter. Celeste did once. She sent a text saying she was proud of me. I didn't respond. Not out of spite, but because her pride didn't mean what it once would have. Ruth's pride meant everything. One evening, as we sat at her kitchen table grading papers together, she looked at me. Do you ever regret it? Choosing teaching? Never. Even after everything? Especially after everything. She smiled. Good. Because the world needs more people like you. I need more people like you. We have each other. That's enough. And it was. If this story reminded you that family isn't always about blood, hit subscribe. Drop a comment telling me about someone who stepped in when your own family stepped out. I'd love to hear your story. And if you're still not subscribing, tell me why. I genuinely want to know.